A polar bear is the largest land predator in the Arctic, but a fully grown walrus can weigh almost twice as much. It has thick skin, a heavy layer of fat, and tusks powerful enough to make any close attack extremely dangerous. So at first, this may look like a simple contest between speed and size, but the environment changes almost everything. On solid ground, the bear can move faster and search for a better angle. Near the shore, the walrus begins to regain its mobility, and in open water, the entire balance may shift. Today, we will compare an adult male polar bear and an adult male Atlantic walrus in 3 environments: dry land, shallow coastal water, and the open sea, using their real anatomy, behavior, and documented encounters to decide which animal has the advantage in each round. Let us begin with the polar bear. An adult male usually weighs somewhere between 660 and 1,500 pounds, although especially large individuals can go beyond that range. For this comparison, we will use a bear weighing around 1,200 pounds, large enough to represent a powerful adult male, but not an unrealistic record holder. Its greatest advantage is not simply strength. It is the combination of strength and mobility. On solid ground, a polar bear can accelerate quickly, change direction, rise onto its hind legs, and use its front paws to control or destabilize another animal. Its claws are short but strong, giving it grip on ice, rock, and the body of struggling prey, while its long jaws are adapted for biting marine mammals. However, a walrus is very different from the seals a polar bear usually hunts. Its body is larger, more heavily protected, and much harder to control, so the bear would probably avoid attacking directly from the front. Instead, it would try to move around the tusks, reach the side of the neck, the head, or the back, and force the walrus into a position where its size becomes less useful. This makes the bear a dangerous opponent, but it also means that every successful attack would require patience, timing, and a willingness to come dangerously close. Now we turn to the Atlantic walrus. Adult males commonly weigh around 2,000 pounds, while especially large individuals can exceed 3,000. For this comparison, we will use a walrus weighing roughly 2,400 pounds, about twice the weight of our polar bear. That difference matters. But mass alone does not decide the fight. The walrus also has thick skin, a heavy layer of fat, and a powerful neck built to withstand clashes with other males. Its tusks are extended canine teeth, and although they are not perfect weapons for every angle, they make a direct attack from the front extremely risky. The walrus does not need to chase the bear, it only needs to keep its head and tusks facing the threat, then use its size to prevent the bear from reaching the neck or back. On land, this defense is limited by slower movement and wider turns. But the walrus is not completely helpless. It can support its body on all 4 flippers and move toward the water, where its weight becomes much less restrictive. So the main question is not whether the bear can hurt the walrus. It probably can. The real question is whether it can cause enough damage before one mistake places it directly in front of those tusks. Round 1 takes place on solid ground, away from the water, and this is where the polar bear has its clearest advantage. Not because it is stronger than the walrus, but because it can use the space around it far more effectively. The bear can accelerate, stop, change direction, and approach from different angles, while the walrus has to turn a body weighing around 2,400 pounds just to keep its tusks facing the threat. That difference gives the bear control over the pace of the encounter. It can move in, test the walrus's reaction, and pull back. Before committing to a full attack, the most likely target would not be the thick center of the body, but the head, the eyes, the side of the neck, or the rear, areas where the walrus is harder to defend. However, reaching any of those places is much more difficult than it sounds. The walrus does not need to match the bear's speed, it only needs to keep turning and deny a safe opening. Its thick skin and heavy layer of fat mean that several bites or claw strikes may cause pain without immediately stopping it, and every extra second spent close to the walrus increases the chance of the bear being caught by a tusk. We also have to consider what victory actually means here. In nature, a polar bear would rarely continue a dangerous attack if the risk became greater than the possible reward, so the walrus may not need to defeat the bear physically. It may only need to remain upright, protect its head, and convince the bear that the attack is not worth continuing. Still, if the fight continues and neither animal can retreat, the bear has more options. It can attack repeatedly, move around the walrus, and wait for fatigue or a defensive mistake while the walrus is forced to react. For that reason, I would give the polar bear a narrow advantage on land, perhaps around 60%. But this is not an easy win. One badly timed attack could change the entire result. Round 2 moves the fight to shallow coastal water, and this is where the balance becomes much harder to judge. The polar bear still has solid ground beneath its feet, so it can use its legs, body weight, and front paws almost as effectively as it did on land. But the walrus is now partially supported by the water, which makes its massive body easier to turn and much less exhausting to move. Even a small increase in depth can change the encounter. In water only a few feet deep, the bear may still circle, step away, and attack from the side, while the walrus remains slow enough to be pressured. But once the walrus begins to float, the bear loses much of the control it had in the first round. The walrus can rotate its body more quickly, keep its tusks facing the bear, and move toward deeper water. Without dragging its full weight across the ground, this also changes the way the bear can attack. On land, it can drive forward with its hind legs and use the surface for leverage. In deeper shallows, it may have to push through the water, which slows each movement and makes it harder to pull away after a failed attempt. The bear could still target the face, neck, or rear flippers, and if it catches the walrus before it reaches deeper water, it may be able to force it back toward shore, but that requires the bear to stay close. Exactly where the tusks are most dangerous. The walrus now has more than defense. It can lunge forward, twist its body, or use the water to approach from an angle that would be difficult on land. So this round depends heavily on the exact depth. Near the shoreline, I would still give the bear a realistic chance. But once the walrus is almost fully supported by the water, the advantage begins to move in its favor. Overall, I would give the walrus a narrow edge in shallow water, around 60%, because this environment reduces its biggest weakness without completely removing the bear's strengths. Round 3 takes place in open water, and here the advantage shifts much more clearly toward the walrus. The polar bear is an excellent long-distance swimmer, but endurance and fighting ability are not the same thing. While swimming, the bear loses the solid surface it used in the first 2 rounds. It can no longer drive forward with its hind legs, brace its body against the ground, or pull the walrus in a controlled direction. Almost every attack has to begin while the bear is already floating, and that makes it much harder to use its full strength. The walrus has the opposite experience. Once its body is fully supported by the water, its weight becomes less restrictive. It can turn faster, dive beneath the bear, and approach from below or from the side, angles that are difficult for the bear to monitor while keeping its head above the surface. The difference in mass also becomes more dangerous here. Our walrus weighs around 2,400 pounds, roughly twice as much as the bear, and in the water, the bear cannot simply step away from that weight. If the walrus pushes into it, twists beneath it, or forces it away from a stable position, the bear has very few ways to recover quickly. This does not mean the polar bear is helpless. It can still bite the head, neck, or back if it manages to approach without meeting the tusks, and its claws may help it hold onto the walrus for a short time. But maintaining that grip would be extremely difficult. The body is smooth, powerful, and constantly moving, while the bear also has to keep itself afloat. The walrus can dive, change depth, and force the bear to react in 3 dimensions rather than simply moving left or right, and that may be the most important difference in this round. On land, the bear controlled the distance. In open water, the walrus controls where the encounter happens. Based on their anatomy and movement, I would give the walrus a strong advantage here, perhaps around 85%. The bear could still succeed under the right circumstances. But in a direct encounter between 2 healthy adult males, open water gives the walrus far more reliable ways to defend itself, escape, or turn the attack back against the bear. After comparing all 3 environments, the most important conclusion is that neither animal is simply stronger in every situation. The polar bear has the wider range of attacking options on solid ground. It can control distance, change direction, and choose when to commit. But it still has to overcome an opponent almost twice its weight. Protected by thick skin, fat, and dangerous tusks, the walrus has fewer options on land, yet it does not need to dominate the entire fight. It only needs to deny the bear a safe opening and remain dangerous long enough for the attack to become too costly. As the water gets deeper, that balance steadily changes. The bear loses the firm support that allows it to use its legs and body weight effectively, while the walrus becomes easier to turn, harder to control, and more capable of attacking from different depths. This is why the result cannot be reduced to a simple comparison of teeth, claws, or body mass. The real deciding factor is which animal can use more of its natural abilities in the environment around it. On land, that animal is the polar bear. Near the shore, the contest becomes much closer, and in open water, the walrus gains the clearest advantage. So before choosing an overall winner, we have to separate one important question. Are we asking which animal could win under perfect conditions, or which animal has the more reliable advantage across all three environments? So the final score is 2 rounds to 1 in favor of the Atlantic walrus. The polar bear takes the land round because its speed, balance, and ability to attack from different angles give it the best chance to create an opening. The walrus takes the shallow water round by a narrow margin, because even a small amount of water begins to reduce its biggest weakness, its limited movement on land, and in open water the result becomes much clearer. The walrus can turn, dive, and use its greater mass in ways the bear cannot easily answer. This does not mean a polar bear could never kill an adult walrus. Real encounters show that it can happen, especially when the walrus is trapped, weakened, or unable to reach deeper water. But in a direct contest between two healthy adult males across all three environments, the walrus has the more reliable overall advantage, the polar bear is the better land fighter, but the closer this battle moves toward the sea, the more the walrus becomes the animal in control. So, do you agree with the final result? Does the walrus deserve the overall victory? Or do you think the polar bear should have won one of the water rounds? Share your verdict in the comments, and tell us which part of the comparison you disagree with most. Subscribe if you want to see more animal matchups where the environment can completely change the winner.